Hello, and thank you for joining the webinar. Today we'll be talking about current compensation trends for administrative and office support professionals. Our findings are based on research we conducted for the 2017 OfficeTeam Salary Guide. Here's a quick fact. Did you know that job openings currently exceed hires? According to the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, also known as BLS for short, since February 2015, the number of job openings has exceeded the number of hires for most months. For most of this report's history, the trend was the other way around, where there was a greater number of hires than job openings. Most recently, in November 2016, there were 303,000 fewer hires throughout the month than there were job openings on the last business day of the month. What does this all suggest? A lot of companies are looking to hire, but they have a hard time finding the right professionals with the right skills to meet the demand. We'll talk more about this trend and others on today's webinar. So before we jump into the content, I'd like to do some introductions. My name is Brandy Britton. I'm the District President for OfficeTeam in Los Angeles. I've been with OfficeTeam since 1999 and started my career in downtown Los Angeles. Chrissie, can you introduce yourself to the attendees?
Yes, thank you, Brandy, and hello, everyone. My name is Chrissie. Don't let that last name intimidate you. It's pronounced much easier than it looks. I am a career coach and I'm a corporate trainer. I help job seekers, career climbers, and career changers to discover and leverage their unique talents and to achieve what I like to call professional nourishment. So that explains my website name, eatyourcareer.com. It's devoted to that topic of how to create a nourishing and enriching career and professional life. So that's a little about me now, but I'm also, more importantly, a former administrative professional myself. So I have a very deep appreciation and admiration of everything that the people in these roles do, and I'm also very familiar with it.
Fantastic. We're thrilled to have you with us today. So let's go over a few housekeeping points. In case you miss a part of the presentation or want to share it with others, the webinar is being recorded. You'll receive an email after the live event with a link to the archive version. There are several features on your webinar player to help enhance today's discussion. Scroll over each icon at the bottom of your screen to learn more. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You can enter any questions at any time in the Q&A box. It is on the left-hand side of your webinar console. This webinar is eligible for one CAP recertification point through the International Association of Administrative Professionals. About a week after the event, attendees who participate in the full live webinar will receive a certificate that can be used for verification purposes. You can access a copy of today's slides by clicking on the green icon with a piece of paper on it. If you need any technical assistance during the live session today, click the yellow icon with a question mark on your toolbar. And then feel free to tweet along during today's event using the hashtag OTSalaries. You can also follow our tweets at the OfficeTeam handle. All right, let's jump in. So here's what we'll cover today. We'll start by discussing today's administrative hiring environment. Then we'll talk about salary ranges for 2017 in the U.S. and in Canada. We'll highlight which administrative positions and skills are in demand. And before we get to the Q&A, we'll discuss salary negotiation do's and don'ts for employees, job seekers, and managers. The findings we'll discuss today are based on research we conducted for the OfficeTeam 2017 Salary Guide. So first, let me tell you a little bit about our salary guide and how it's prepared each year. For years, companies have consulted the salary guide to determine appropriate compensation for administrative professionals at all levels. In fact, this is OfficeTeam's 22nd annual salary guide. In addition, organizations such as the BLS have referenced the guide for the most comprehensive information on compensation and hiring. The data and analysis in the guide are based on the thousands of interim and full-time placements we make during the year. We also gather insights from our expert staffing professionals. In addition, we conduct research on workplace trends that could impact salaries, and we survey executives and professionals about these trends. Then finally, we pull from our own in-depth analysis of current and future hiring trends. Let's take a deeper look at today's hiring environment. According to the latest jobs report from the BLS, employers added 156,000 jobs in December. The unemployment rate ticked up slightly to 4.7%, up from 4.6% in November. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate for college-degreed workers who are 25 years or older, a group which is typically in strong demand by employers, was about half the national unemployment rate at 2.5%. Retention is also a huge concern for employers right now because more professionals are willing to leave their jobs for other opportunities. According to the most recent job openings and labor turnover report from the BLS, the number of professionals who quit their jobs in November of 2016 was more than 3 million. The quits rate was 2.1% and continues to indicate worker confidence of other opportunities. Given these trends, it's becoming clear to companies that they need to boost their retention efforts, and that includes recognizing and rewarding employees and giving them the perks they desire before they leave for greener pastures. Now let's look at the unemployment rates for some administrative positions. As you can see, these positions are below the national average of 4.7% according to the December report from the BLS, and many employers may be experiencing candidate shortages in these areas when hiring. Specifically, look at human resources assistants, 1.5%, administrative assistants, 3.2%. Those are staggering numbers. Additionally, the job outlook for administrative professionals appears bright in the years ahead. According to the BLS, office and administrative support positions are projected to have more than 5.6 million total job openings between 2014 and 2024, the largest number among the 22 occupational groups that are tracked. The more administrative roles with strong ROIs, the more companies are going to be looking to add these types of positions. In Canada, finding skilled candidates also continues to be a challenge. According to Statistics Canada's December 2016 Labor Force Survey, business, finance, and administrative occupations have 3.2% unemployment rate. This is much lower than the Canadian national unemployment rate of 6.9%. All right, let's go ahead and look at some of the data from our 2017 salary guide. In the United States, starting salaries for administrative professionals will rise on average of 3.5%. However, compensation for some positions is expected to exceed the national average. A few examples. The base compensation levels for senior executive assistants will rise at 4.3% as compared to last year. Project managers will see an increase of 4.1%. Customer service managers will see increases of 4.1%. And certified professional coders will see an increase of 4%. I suspect we'll also see some significant gains in human resources, particularly due to the demand for those roles. In Canada, starting salaries for administrative professionals will rise an average of 3%. Again, however, compensation for some positions is expected to exceed the national average. So, for example, the base compensation levels for senior executive assistants will rise 3.7% as compared to last year. Administrative assistants are expected to see starting salaries increase 3.7%. Project managers will see increases of 3.6%, and customer service managers will see increases of 3.6%. All right. In addition, certain in-demand certifications, skills, or experience can lead to starting compensation that's higher than the industry average. In fact, our research shows that employers often will pay more for Microsoft Office Specialist certification, up to 8% higher in the U.S. and up to 10% higher in Canada. Expert multilingual abilities can pay up to 12% higher in the U.S. and up to 15% higher in Canada. So a question for Chrissie, are there any other certifications or additional education that can be helpful for administrative professionals to pursue?
Absolutely. I am a huge fan of the American Society of Administrative Professionals. They're ASAP is what they're known by. And they have a new certification. It's called the PACE certification. I'm a huge fan of it. Full transparency, I also helped to develop a portion of it. I developed 2 modules that are in that certification. But it's very comprehensive. It's a great way to just demonstrate your interest and your commitment to the role of being an administrative professional. Of course, the IAAP has the CAP, the Certified Administrative Professional Certification. It's probably the most well-known designation that's available out there. They have specialties in organizational management and then another specialty in technology. So those ones are more of the well-known ones. There's some lesser-known certifications as well that are definitely worthwhile looking into. I know that Office Dynamics, which is run by Joan Burge, who's just a pioneer, very instrumental in this field, she offers a certification called World Class Assistant that gives you the CEAP designation, CEAP. So those are worth exploring. But I would also just add a bit of a caution here as well. I certainly don't think that there's ever a drawback to more education. It's always a good idea if you have the time and you have the financial ability to do it. But I would just be cautious about doing a certification solely for the potential salary impact because it's not guaranteed. You're probably not going to get certified and then just immediately get a raise or be able to demand a higher salary. It's really about how you use that education to deliver greater value to the organizations that you're serving. So you've got to make sure whatever education you're getting, you're able to implement it and show how it impacted your ability to deliver in the workplace.
All right, I love that. The education to benefit you as an individual and your employer, I think, is such a great point on why seeking advanced skills is a great thing, and ultimately more money. So thank you, Chrissie. All right, now let's look at 3 trends that will affect hiring in 2017. First, experienced candidates are in demand. Top candidates do not stay in the job market for very long. Firms are especially keen to hire administrative professionals with 2 to 5 years of experience. Very desirable candidates have strong technical abilities as well as strong interpersonal skills. Some of the things that we're seeing in Los Angeles is a high demand for recent graduates with internship experience. We're also seeing a desire for employees that are flexible and willing to do more than their job description and are very customer service oriented. The second trend we're seeing is that businesses are competing for top candidates. Talent shortages mean that those experienced candidates might field multiple job offers or job opportunities. Firms that want to recruit and retain top candidates have to offer competitive pay and incentives. When an administrative professional is considering multiple offers, decisions can come down to perks and office culture. Some of the perks that we're seeing are flexible schedules, remote days, 1 day a month, and in some cases as simple as relaxed dress codes on Friday. From the culture side, office events such as, since we've got the Super Bowl coming up, Super Bowl potlucks that allow employees to wear their favorite team jersey, or some things as simple as an office picnic or beach days for those of you who live on the coast. The third trend is that project staffing and temp-to-hire arrangements are on the rise. As companies work to address new business, project-based staffing is increasing. Project staffing and temp-to-hire arrangements also give organizations the chance to evaluate a candidate's aptitude and performance in action. Project staffing also allows companies to minimize too much overtime required by current employees and also allows for ease during busy peak seasons within a company. Now let's take a look at the skills and attributes companies are seeking in administrative professionals. Communication skills, communication. Administrative professionals need top-notch communication skills. That includes interacting with clients and the public, writing all company emails, or delivering crucial information to executives. Companies are looking for support staff who are articulate and well-organized. Chrissie, why else is it important for administrative professionals to have strong communication skills, and how would you suggest they improve these skills?
And such a good question, Brandy. This is such a foundational skill for the role. I mean, it's really the basis of how we get work done in the workplace. I think one of the important things that a lot of people overlook is the fact that how you communicate hugely contributes to perceptions, and perceptions absolutely impact reality. So you can be the smartest, most competent assistant in the world, but if you can't communicate effectively, the perceptions that people have about you might end up being really negative, and that might not really reflect accurately what you're delivering in the workplace. And those perceptions ultimately impact how people are interacting with you and the opportunities they afford you. So it's a skill that really matters on a lot of different levels. How you improve it, I think it depends a lot on what area you want to improve on. I always tell people you're on the right track if you are challenging yourself to do things that you're a little bit afraid about. So if you're not a great public speaker, volunteer to do a group presentation. If you really struggle with effective writing skills, volunteer to write up an important report. If you struggle with difficult conversations, tackle them head on. You know, it's all about really confronting those areas where you need a little improvement and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. It's the same as with any skill. You know, reflect on yourself and get some feedback from other people to figure out where you need to improve. Set some goals for yourself, create a plan, and tackle it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Also in demand are multilingual abilities. Businesses are putting more value on bilingual or multilingual candidates, especially for public-facing positions. We find, in general, that Spanish is by far the most requested language, but fluency in other languages may be more helpful depending on what geographic area you are in. In Los Angeles, the top 3 languages that we get requests for are Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. Employers also seek flexibility. Today's administrative professionals have more areas of responsibility in their purview than ever before. That calls for candidates who are adaptable, willing to learn, and able to multitask. Some of the fun things that we've seen employers asking that require flexibility are party planning, event planning, and in some cases, monitoring social media. We call it the social media watchdog, monitoring what is being said on social media for that business or that particular company. So, Chrissie, how else has the administrative professional role changed since your days of being an assistant?
Well, it's pretty interesting because I think that, I left the field right at the very beginning of 2007. So it's been a little while, and in many ways, the fundamentals have remained the same. But of course, back then, social media wasn't what it is now, so we never had any social media responsibilities, and we certainly weren't attached by smartphones the way we are now. These days, there is this unspoken expectation that administrative professionals and assistants are going to have 24 accessibility, and that can be very difficult to manage. So I always recommend that you get very clear up front about what the expectations are. When should you be checking email messages? Should you be doing that from home? Are you expected to respond to emails and phone calls in your off hours? And if so, are you working with your human resources department to make sure that there's appropriate compensation for that time outside of the office? For me, I was really only on call when my executive was traveling. But these days, it's very, very different. So you need to be okay with what's needed from your executive and the people you're supporting, and establish those limits if it's needed. Because your executive might want 24-hour access 365 days a year, but for most people, that's not going to work. So you're going to need to go through some negotiation there.
Those are great points. I really like your point about asking what their preference is on being accessible via email after hours. Resourcefulness is also important. I like to call this the figure it out factor. Administrative workers who fully understand the business they work in are always in demand. It allows you to get things done or leverage contacts within the company to help you get things done. Professionals who are able to work independently and have a deep knowledge of the organization and the available resources are key. Chrissie, why is being a proactive administrative professional such an asset to organizations?
Ooh, Brandy, you just hit on a topic I'm incredibly passionate about. I love that you called it the figure it out factor. I just wrote that down because that's a great term for it. I have written about this extensively. I actually just published a book last year called The Proactive Professional. That's how much I believe in this idea of being resourceful and taking initiative. It is the number one thing that I hear from executives. They tell me they want their assistants to anticipate needs. They want support staff to think and act 2 steps ahead of them all the time. Many of you have probably heard that language before. There's this kind of unspoken mind reader expectation. They don't want to have to tell you what to do. They want you to know what needs to be done and just do it. So when you are proactive and you have that ability, it completely differentiates you from your peers. You're not just an order taker, you're an actual partner with the people that you're supporting. You're really engaging in a much more strategic way. And that's the kind of skill that inspires executives to, take their assistants with them when they move up. It's those relationships you hear about where people have worked with one another for 25 years. It inspires executives to treat their assistants as real partners and contributing members of the team, not simply as support staff. So I am hugely passionate about being proactive and taking initiative. Thanks for letting me share on that, Brandy.
I love it. I know my assistant is amazing. She knows what I need before I know I need it. And we've worked together for 5 years, and I hope to work with her for the next 25 at a minimum. So thank you. All right. Now, these are the most wanted tech skills for administrative professionals as reported to us by hiring managers as well as recruiters. The Microsoft Office suite, including Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Social media tools such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and I'd even throw in Yelp. Enterprise resource planning, ERP softwares like SAP, customer relationship management, CRM softwares. The most popular one is Salesforce. Database management tools like FileMaker Pro and Microsoft Access. So Chrissie, another question for you is how can administrative professionals keep their technical skills sharp and current?
Another great question, and this is one, broadly speaking, I always encourage people to take ownership of their own development. And when it comes to technology skills, this is one area where you can take a lot of ownership because there's just so many resources that are available online for growing your technology skills. You just need to go out there and do a little research and you will find them. All of these different types of software that we use, they have many, many websites that are devoted to educating the users of the software. So, Brandy, I know you mentioned Salesforce. That you can go online and you can watch all kinds of Salesforce instructional tutorials to learn from. Anything you want to learn, you can learn online. I know a good friend of mine just learned SQL databases. It's something I know nothing about, but she did her entire education online. With technology in particular, I always encourage people to just keep a very playful mindset about it. Be curious and click around and figure things out. Don't just rely on other people to show you how to do things. If you spend a little bit of time playing, you can figure things out on your own and you're much better off for it because it makes you more proficient in the long run. It takes a little bit longer on the front end, but at the end of it, you're just more technologically competent when you figure things out on your own. Go into Excel and say, okay, I want to figure out how to do this particular thing. Have a particular goal in mind, and then play and Google for it and try to make things work, always keeping a backup, of course. But that's really, I think, what I know has worked best for me and works best for a lot of people is having that playful attitude and getting in there and being willing to get your hands dirty with it.
I think that's great. Thank you. All right, so timing is everything. We talked earlier about how competitive it is for employers to get top candidates. A recent survey from our company revealed that 46% of candidates lose interest in the firm if they don't hear back within 1 to 2 weeks after the initial interview. In fact, 23% of applicants are willing to wait just 1 week after the interview to hear back. And a great example we like to share with employers in the Los Angeles market is to Google the position that you are recruiting for and see how many job openings there are within a certain vicinity And this is how many other employers you might be competing with for a candidate. So for example, I recently did a search from my home office for administrative assistant openings. And there were over 400 openings within 10 miles of my home office. So that's how many other employers are competing within that market for great candidates. If you're taking too long to hire, you're taking a huge risk, and you may potentially not get the best candidate, or you may also turn off prospective candidates down the road. As we mentioned, candidates may be receiving multiple offers, and those with various options will often choose the organization that shows the most interest in them. That's why moving quickly, having strong communication with them, and a solid hiring process in place is incredibly important. Here are some tips for consolidating the process and checking off all the steps while hiring. First, determine what the need is. Are you hiring for a true full-time position, or is it for a temporary role? If you're not sure, it may be best to start out with a temporary. Carefully update or create a job description to reflect current needs accurately. So these often have to be updated to include some of the points that we mentioned before. Technical skills, resourcefulness, flexibility, things like that. You do want to outline the technical and soft skills that are required. Next, meet with all the stakeholders involved and determine a timeline for the hiring process. So for example, determine when you want to schedule the first round of interviews. Determine what date the various managers are available to do interviews. Is anyone going to be on vacation? Will they be accessible while they're on vacation, etc. Then conduct interviews and get feedback immediately. If you have the ability, ideally schedule all in-person interviews on one date to consolidate the timeline. This allows currently working candidates flexibility and not having to take off too much time from their work. You want to keep in contact with the candidates. There is no such thing as over-communication when you are courting potential candidates for positions. You want to inform them when you expect to make your final decision. You want to inform them how many interviews there might be and who they might be meeting. Do make sure to follow up with them if there is a delay. Candidates may perceive silence as a lack of interest. Finally, once reference checks are completed, make a verbal offer and be prepared to negotiate salary and perks. Once all parties are happy, set a concrete start date, and then don't leave a candidate waiting or with time to have second thoughts. We're seeing in many cases that companies are bringing in temporaries to help speed up the process. So, for example, one way that they're utilizing temporaries is to do the work of the open position so that the new employee doesn't have a pile of work waiting for them on their first day. Or in some cases, organizations are utilizing temporaries to sort through the resumes of the individuals applying for the various positions. As mentioned before, there's a talent shortage for the best and the brightest. If you aren't offering an attractive salary, your favorite candidates or top performers might go somewhere else. So here's some salary negotiation tips for employers. Number one, do your research. Low pay can be seen as a warning sign that your firm doesn't value its employees. So you want your offer to be at least on par with the industry standards If not, ideally exceed them. Number 2, know your limit. Consider the existing pay levels for similar positions in your company. If you agree to a higher salary to win a stellar candidate or keep an employee, you potentially risk lowering morale or even losing existing staff if they find out about the raise. So it's important to know where your current compensation trends lie. Leave nothing off the table. If you can't meet a candidate or an employee's pay expectations, look for other ways to modify the components of the compensation package, such as providing extra vacation days, potentially tuition reimbursement, or remote work options. Truly know all the benefits and perks that your company has to offer so that you can know what to sell if needed. Don't gloss over signs of a bad fit. You shouldn't have to work so hard or beg somebody to join your company or stay on your team. Also, don't agree to something that would disrupt your standard practices. If someone seems to accept an offer begrudgingly, you could end up with an employee who is dissatisfied and brings down morale or continues his or her job search even after accepting your offer. A few other miscellaneous tips that we're seeing employers do most recently is inquiring with the applicant about what other types of job offers or what other compensation they're seeing out there. They can be a great resource for you. And lastly, it's okay to ask the applicant if you are their first choice. Do they want to work for you before extending an offer? That should help you with your overall leverage and being able to get that person on your team. All right, let's go ahead and switch to the other side of things. So, Chrissie, what are some salary negotiation tips for workers and job seekers?
Well, I've got a few, and I'll share what I've got, and then Brandy, if I've missed anything essential, you be sure to add on. But for me, the big thing for job seekers that I want you to know is to always negotiate when you are a job seeker. You don't want to leave money on the table, and there's been all sorts of research around the fact that your incoming salary has an enormous impact on your career for the lifetime of your career. You can end up really compounding the problem if you accept a lower rate on the front end. And I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but you don't have any more leverage at any other time than you do at the very beginning of the relationship with the employer. And I know a lot of people who say, well, I'll accept lower pay now and I'll get in and I'll prove myself and then I'll ask for a raise later. And sometimes, yes, that will work. But as soon as you are an employee, you lose a certain amount of leverage because your employer is no longer competing to try to bring you in. You're in. And the employer knows that it takes a lot to launch a new job search and decide to leave. So the best time to negotiate is when you're still on the market, when you have options, and when the company really wants to pull you in. So take advantage of that on the front end. At the same time, I don't want you just out there negotiating a salary without real justification behind it. Make sure that you are explaining the value that you deliver and why you are truly worth that higher salary. And then, of course, you also want to be aware of your priorities, your personal priorities. I know a lot of people who are willing to accept a lower salary for some of those other benefits that Brandy was mentioning. Things like having a flexible schedule, being able to take off at 3 p.m. on a Friday to go watch your kid's baseball game, Maybe you'll accept a lower salary if you've got a shorter commute, something like that. So make sure that you've evaluated what you need in your life and what those priorities actually look like, where you're willing to make some compromise there. So on the other end, for an employee, when you are looking to ask for a raise, let's talk about that. The big thing that I would share here is that you want to make sure, again, back to that justification, that your reasons are back to the value you are contributing to the organization. Never ask for a raise based on your personal financial situation. I've heard too many people who ask for a raise because they need a new car, my car's breaking down, my kid needs braces. Whatever it is, those personal reasons, they're important to you, yes, but this is about your value to the organization. It also shouldn't be about what you will do in the future. I've heard that from people as well, where they start making some promises about, if I get a raise, here's all the great stuff I can do. It is about the demonstrated value that you have already delivered. So make sure you have your evidence with you and you can specifically speak about those accomplishments and the impact that those things have had on the organization. Make sure you're capturing those accomplishments along the way, noting any sort of quantifiable, measurable results of the work that you're doing. And then finally, I would just also say, when asking for a raise, make sure that you are keeping mindful of the broad business environment and that you understand what's going on in the organization. I think Brandy mentioned a minute ago, timing is everything. It's absolutely true when asking for a raise. Make sure that you time it appropriately and you're not doing it at a time when the organization has already expressed that maybe there's some financial concerns, something like that. If there's been recent reduction in force, you want to just be mindful about it. It's not to say that it can't happen during those times, because a reduction in force probably means you're taking on more work. So you probably have a lot of contributed value to talk about, but just be mindful of the timing. So those are my recommendations. I don't know if that covered everything, Brandy, or if you have anything else to add there.
Chrissie, those are great points. I think bottom line, timing is everything. Timing of when you get the offer is the right time to negotiate, and then timing when you ask for an increase. So I think very, very good points. So thank you so much. Now let's talk about some of the resources OfficeTeam provides that can help you with your hiring, job search, and career advancement efforts. For those interested in receiving a free copy of our 2017 Salary Guide to read more about information we discussed, it's available on our Salary Center at officeteam.com/salary-center. There you can also access the latest hiring outlook and regional trends. You'll see sample job descriptions and our OfficeTeam salary calculator. This allows you to look up a single position and customize salary data for your city. In addition to our Salary Guide and Salary Center, check out OfficeTeam Take Note blog at blog.officeteam.com. This has latest career and management insights for administrative professionals. Now we'd like to respond to some of the questions we've received. We might not have time to address all the questions, but we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Cynthia is our Public Relations Manager for OfficeTeam, and she will now help us with this portion of Q&A.
Thank you, Brandy. So we've received a lot of questions during this webinar, and the first one I'm going to direct towards Chrissie. The question is, do the costs of certification pay for itself? What do you think there, Chrissie?
As I said before, I think it's a smart investment. I mean, you are your greatest asset. When you are investing in your own education and your own growth, that's an investment in your long-term career future. It's it's something that helps you to demonstrate your commitment to your career. So it can be leveraged in salary negotiation and performance reviews, but it also is about the expanded capability that you gain when you go through certification. You gain all of this new competence and information that you can go out there and implement and use, and you can create new accomplishments for yourself. Those accomplishments are, I call them career currency. When you rack up those accomplishments in the workplace, you can then go and talk about them, and you have that justification for raises and higher salaries in other organizations. And certifications and education are what allow you to do that. So I'm a huge fan. I'm a believer in it. And ultimately, yes, the simple answer to your question is I do believe that they pay for themselves.
Great. Thank you, Chrissie. And I think Brandy also mentioned that according to our salary guide, you can get a little bit more in terms of salary if you do have specific certifications. So great negotiating point there as well. The next question I'm going to pose towards Brandy, and it says here, what if you haven't used Microsoft Office applications recently, but you're computer literate and you can work with in-house databases, etc.? How do you sell yourself in that aspect?
Great question. Well, number one, I would suggest making sure that you are brushed up with those skills, so you're practicing at home, doing tutorials online. If there's a volunteer opportunity where you can utilize those and have recent experience, that is a great way to have current relevant experience with Microsoft Office applications. Now, if none of those things are available to you, then during the interview process, it's important to highlight what skills you do have with proprietary systems and how you've utilized those for your prior company or your current employer, and how you're technically savvy. So always providing examples of what you've done and what you've completed with technology always helps employers find more comfort in your overall tech skills. So if it's not recent, address it on the front end that you might not have recent experience, but then share with them what you do have and how you utilize that.
Great. Thanks, Brandy. And Chrissie, this next question I think I'm going to pose to you. It says here, my executive is non-confrontational. What do I do when I need her to be? If it relates to me needing a response rather than being left hanging, how do I approach her about this?
Ooh, this is a great one. So a non-confrontational executive, and you really need that person to stand up and get something done for you. So a couple of things just come to mind right from the get-go, and that is to always recognize what we can change, what we have control over, and what we don't have control over. We don't have control over the executive's kind of innate personality of being non-confrontational, but we can certainly make the direct request that they, carry out what needs to be done so that you can do the job. However they need to carry it out, your executive's approach will probably be non-confrontational, but it still needs to get done. So for what I have found was very useful in my past was explaining the roadblock so that the executive understands that until this next step is carried out on their part, I'm at an impasse, that I can't move forward without that next step being completed on their end. And there, that you have to communicate that. But once that's communicated, then you're at a place where you can't move forward. And so it's opening that communication, letting them know the impact that this is having on you and your ability to move forward with your priorities, and allowing them to handle it in the way that they see fit, which might not be specifically confrontational, but they need to get the information to you. So hopefully that helps. 9 times out of 10, these situations come down to communication and having that clear communication with the executive.
Great, Chrissy. I think that was a great question to ask. The next question we have is for Brandy, and a lot of folks are asking again about that CAP certificate and how they're going to receive it. Can you repeat that information, Brandy?
Absolutely. So again, this webinar is eligible for one CAP recertification point through the International Association of Administrative Professionals. So about 1 week from today, all attendees who participated in the full live webinar will receive via email a certificate that can be used for verification purposes.
Great, thanks for repeating that. And then Chrissy, we have a question here that we're hoping you can answer. What specific social media skills do you recommend? And I know Brandy talked about this a little bit and you did as well, but anything else you can think of in terms of social media skills?
I think, in my experience, I didn't have that on my plate as an administrative professional, but from just my own experience in business and how social media is being utilized, the things that you need to be able to do in your role for social media would be monitoring, understanding how various platforms work and how you can see what's being said about your organization, because that's probably what you'll be doing in that capacity. Making sure that you're monitoring any client interactions, that clients are sending mentions of your organization out into the world, that you're able to monitor those. Depending on the role, you may also be asked to manage those situations and see them through, so that anyone who is contacting the company through social media about a complaint, for example, that you then give them some concierge service to ensure that that situation gets resolved in a satisfactory way for them. And potentially, maybe your organization will be asking you to post some updates for your company in sort of a public relations kind of capacity. So back to writing skills, we've talked about the importance of communication. If you are representing the organization on a social media platform, spelling has to be correct, grammar has to be correct. You need to be using professional etiquette and making sure that your language choices are appropriate. So those are the things that I think would initially come to mind, aside from just the functionality of understanding how the various platforms work. Getting on Twitter, understanding that concept is quite different from the Facebook, or the concept of Facebook and the concept of LinkedIn. So getting familiar with those platforms as well would be important.
Great, thanks, Chrissy. And Brandy, a question here from the employer side. How do employers gauge the candidate's qualifications, since most candidates usually upsell themselves? So I guess this is asking in the resume and the interview how to really evaluate how qualified that person is.
Yes, this is one of the most important tasks in identifying whether or not this person is going to succeed within your company. And so there's two different ways that we recommend employers verify the actual skill set. Number one is when the applicant is articulating that they have these skills, asking for specific examples of how they've utilized that particular skill, what they've done with it. And then my very favorite is verifying those skills from references. So asking for previous supervisory references and inquiring with the actual manager of that person, how did they utilize this particular program, or verifying the most important things that you want to know about that candidate.
Thanks, Brandy. And Chrissy, here's a question for you, and it should be an easy one, I think. So this person just wants to know what the ASAP certification acronym stands for, because they missed it.
The PACE certification? Yeah, so PACE stands for, let me see here, Professional Administrative Certification of Excellence. PACE certification.
Thanks, Chrissy.
That was an easy one.
And then we'll bring this one back to Brandy then. So this person wants to know, is a salary increase warranted just for tenure at a company, Or can a company ask that individual to take on more responsibility prior to an increase?
Sure. Well, it depends. So certainly employers want to pay the positions within market conditions. So if for some reason you've got a group of employees whose salaries are below market conditions, you probably want to review increases for them and at a faster rate than once every year. Now, if they're already being paid at market value, then it's a great idea to add more responsibilities. A lot of employees want that kind of challenge that helps retention by challenging your employees, and so it's fair to ask them to take on more responsibilities for an increase, certainly.
Great. And I'm going to give one more question to Brandy just because we've gotten a lot of inquiries about this. Some folks missed the URL for downloading the salary guide as well as using that salary calculator. Can you just repeat that one more time?
Yeah, you got it. So for everyone who's interested in receiving a free copy of our 2017 salary guide, it is available at our salary center at officeteam.com/salary-center or -center.
Great. Well, that's about all the time we have for questions. Brandy, I'm going to turn it back to you so you can close up our program.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us for this webinar. And a huge thank you to Chrissie for all of your great insights. We hope everyone found the information interesting and useful as you navigate the rest of the year. So again, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.